Welcome to Successful Living with Bill Knapik. Every week we talk about success and everything that goes along with it. You'll learn the principles of success, how to achieve success, and learn to overcome challenges that may be getting in the way of success in your life. You'll hear from Bill Knapik, a radio personality and business development expert, along with insight from special guests. If you're ready to find your path to success or take the success you're enjoying to the next level, stay tuned. Successful Living with Bill Knapik is on right now.
And welcome to the show, Successful Living with Bill Knapik. And today, that's me, and today with Tess Gerritsen, international best-selling author with the current book right now. It's called I Know a Secret. It's been in the New York Times bestsellers list, and here she is, the one and only Tess Gerritsen. Tess, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to see you face-to-face.
That's right. This is our third show, and the first time you are actually here in Houston for a book signing, so we're so glad to welcome you to Houston and to be on the show right here in person.
So,
let's tell people, first of all, people know you with the Rizzoli and Isles characters and so many more things. But let's tell them about your new book, which is, if you're tuning into the YouTube video, I Know a Secret. Let's talk about that a bit.
well, it's the 12th book in the Rizzoli and Isles series. The series starring homicide detective Jane Rizzoli and medical examiner Maura Isles. And they are dealing with a really puzzling mystery. First of all, they find a dead woman who's lying peacefully in bed, and you don't even know that she's been murdered, except for the fact that her eyeballs are in her hand. And Maura can't figure out what killed her.
That is so, and that's what makes it interesting. I mean, through the ages in TV and books, we see so many different ways, unfortunately, that people get murdered in these fictional accounts. It's interesting that you found new ways to make even the murder scene so interesting. And, of course, as the characters pursue to find out what's going on, it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, you know, what's fascinating is the idea that you can murder somebody and the medical examiner can't figure out how you did it. Because what's done to this woman has been done post-mortem, but what killed her?
Very interesting, and that is right. Well, if you're gonna, and I would think every murderer is out there to stump the forensic team that goes forth. How did you even get this idea for this book? And so many components come together.
Well, it started off when I was traveling in Italy and looking at a lot of paintings in museums. And, you know, a lot of the museums in these have paintings that are sacred art. And you see the same themes again and again, the Madonna and Child, the saints. And it gets to be a little tiring and boring until I bought a book called How to Read a Painting. And it described the symbols that medieval painters used for their portraits. Little things like if you see a woman holding a palm frond, that means she died a martyr. And you see symbols that represent certain saints. So a woman holding an ointment pot, that means that is Mary Magdalene. And it became fascinating for me to look at these paintings as if I was going on a treasure hunt. I would find the symbols in the painting, and I knew who that person was, and I knew what the painting represented. And then I thought, as a writer, what if a killer did that? What if a killer used his crime scenes the way the painters used their portraits of the saints, and left symbols there that meant something to someone?
And along the way, you were taking the reader on that same treasure hunt, which is so fascinating. And when we think about, as you mentioned, the saints, and myself growing up Catholic, I was exposed to the saints, and that in itself was very interesting. But in your book, we find out about some saints we've never heard of, and there are unfortunate ways that they left this planet. So interesting.
It was, you know, the history of Catholic saints is pretty bloody and pretty grotesque, yeah. and many of these martyrs died horrifying deaths. So a lot of that is in the book.
Now, I've asked you before on other books, but this book, how long did this project take till it was actually released just this past August?
Well, the book itself took about a year to write, but I have to say that the supporting stuff, the idea, parts of the idea probably came to me over a number of years. And this is the way I work. I have an ideas file. I mean, it's actually a folder. And when I come across a news article that's interesting, I'll tear it out and stick it in that folder. And sometimes it takes years for these ideas to coalesce, and I realize there's a book here. So I would say that from the first moment I read an article that would later on lead to this story was probably 10 years ago.
Now, as you assemble these ideas, let's say for numbers' sake, let's say you have 20 ideas.
Yeah.
Those 20 may not go into one book. 10 may go to one book and
Right.
another. So it's
Right.
just nice to have that idea library floating around.
Yeah, well, to me, creativity is about combining elements that have never been combined together before. It's my formula is 1 + 1 = 4. Because you get two different ideas, you put them together, and wow, you've got something new and amazing and very, very powerful. So that's where I know A Secret came from. It came from not only the idea of the saints, but also something that really happened historically in the United States justice system in the late 80s and early 90s. And that's the thing that was in my folder for many years.
And for fans of Rizzoli and Isles, as I am, this book made me like them even more, and their interactions, and also just the way they communicate with each other. And Maura Isles, we find out things about her that we've never found out before, as far as what drives her to do what she does in her profession, and also what just makes her psychological makeup.
Well, she's a very complex person.
She's my favorite, by the way.
More complex than I realized when I started writing this series, because things would bubble up from Maura's past that even she was not aware of. One of the things being that she's an adopted child, and her mother, her birth mother, who she'd never met, she finds out that this woman is serving a life term in prison, and she's a murderer. And so this is Maura, whose job is to catch murderers, is the daughter of a murderer. What does that do to your psyche?
Not good.
Yeah.
But that makes for an interesting reading, because I love that when I met through this book, when you meet her mother and also the mother's demeanor. I mean, it's just not right.
She's a creepy woman.
She really is.
We all have problems with our mothers, but hopefully not the way Maura has with her mother.
Not that way. And if we would dial back to many, many years ago when you even created Rizzoli and Isles, give us a word about that. And were they were created at the same time, almost as a pair, or how did that develop?
No, not really. They were created organically. Jane was the only character from this pair that was in the first book, called The Surgeon, and she was just a minor character in that story. She was supposed to die, and I got to the scene where I was supposed to kill her, and then by that time I'd already learned to like Jane so much and be so interested in what happened to her next that I wrote a second book called The Apprentice. In The Apprentice, I introduced Maura Isles, and she was a secondary character, but I became interested in her. So I wrote a third book, and that's how the series came about. These characters just kept fascinating me, and I always wanted to know what happened to them next.
And by the way, the very first book I read was The Apprentice. So after I read that, I backed up into The Surgeon. I'm like, it was kind of fun to go from the second part of the story and revisit the first and find even more about this Warren Hoyt, right?
Yes, he's
another fun guy.
He's a fun guy. The typical sociopath, except he's very, very, very clever, and he enjoys inflicting pain on people, which makes him a very dangerous criminal.
Very dangerous indeed. So let's tell people, as an author, and you're just talking about how you developed a character and perhaps they're going to be around, then you find out more that you like them or find out more places to take them. These characters really are to the reader, certainly they seem real. As the author, they must be real to you.
They do, and I especially Maura, because Maura's me. A lot of her characteristics are right from my life. I don't have a crazy mother, but I think her personality, the fact that we both are dependent on science and logic, and we want to explain things in a logical way, and when we can't, it completely drives us nuts. And also, where she went to school, what she studied, the wine she drinks, the car she drives. That's all from my life.
And for those that do not know, and most of your fans do, you are a retired physician, right? So you have that background, the medical knowledge, which the readers love, because you explain it in a way where while not understanding everything, you give us a glimpse into that world through Maura and these crimes.
Well, I try to be a translator for science, and many of my books are very science-heavy, whether it's space medicine or whether it's forensic science, because I feel that there are a lot of people out there who are hungry for answers that can be proven, answers with evidence, and that's exactly who my character is. She wants evidence.
And with each and every story, sometimes we'll pick up a movie video, and we'll see. I like the special features on movies.
Yeah,
in fact,
I do too.
I'm the person. I'm the person that sits there and watch the credits because I think, wow, that many people it took to make the movie.
Yeah.
However, sometimes on those extra bonus features, you see alternative endings. So there'll be the movie, and it'll end one way, but you see that the creators of the movie said, oh, we're going to try it this way. In your books, do you ever do that? Do you have one ending or two endings lined up, and then you think on which way it's going to go, or how does that work?
Oh, well, I never know what my ending is until I do it. That's that. I guess the alternative endings are all the ones that I juggle with, and then decide I'm going to kick out. The truth is, I don't outline ahead of time. I don't have an idea where the story's going, and sometimes I don't know who the villain is until almost the end of the first draft. And by the time the villain pops out at me, I realize, oh, if I'm surprised, my audience will be surprised as well. So I think it's a technique that I've used again and again. It drives me crazy because I have a lot of writer's block. I don't know where stories are going until I see the answer as I get there.
And when you write, Tess, do you write at the same time every day, or you budget 5 hours a day or 2 or whatever it is? What's your writing discipline?
My writing discipline is that I try to write 1,000 words a day, which works out to be 4 pages a day. But the only peculiar thing about my process is that my first draft is written with a pen and unlined typing paper. I can
No
type,
computer?
I can type 100 words a minute. That's not the problem. It's that if I see my words on a computer screen, I feel the need to edit. And if I edit, I will edit over and over again and never get past that page because you become a perfectionist. You have to use a different part of your brain for that.
So you write longhand?
I write longhand, I write sideways, I write big, I write small, and it's a little bit like going back to childhood, the first time you learn to hold a pen and paper. And that's the immediate connection to your creation, is that physical connection with a pen.
We hear so much about it, about that fact. Are you right or left-handed, by the way?
Right-handed.
Okay.
I know, you'd think a creative person would be left-handed, but I'm right-handed.
You never know. So tell us, as you to stay with a project like that for a year, there's probably so many things that keep you engaged. To me, probably the fact that you don't know where it's going to end. You're on the adventure yourself, but
Right.
How do you stay focused for such a long period of time?
Well, deadlines help. Contracts help. But right now, I'm writing without a contract, and I'm writing just for the sheer pleasure of seeing where the story takes me.
That's fascinating. And as always, we talk sometimes about the cover of the book. The cover, it tells a story. People see it in the store. Again, the cover on this book, just like Playing with Fire, that was one of my favorite covers.
Yeah.
The book before this. And this is a great cover, too. And if you're tuning in again to YouTube, you could see this. I Know a Secret. We're talking with Tess Gerritsen, another great Rizzoli and Isles book, her latest book, I Know a Secret. Tell us a little bit about this cover, Tess.
Well, this, I take no responsibility or credit for my covers because that's done by my wonderful publisher, Random House. And in this particular cover, it's a silhouette of a woman standing in dune grass. You don't know what's going on, but I think it matches the title and also one of the characters. There is a character in this story who's very mysterious named Holly, and she knows a secret, and it's a very dangerous secret. But Holly is afraid to reveal it because it's dangerous to her as well.
Interesting. Let's tell people also, changing gears, the movie Island Zero. You and I talked about, actually, each time we've talked, this is our third time together, each time we talked, you talked about you were going to do it the first time. You released it. So let's tell people the movie Island Zero, a little bit about that and how they could see it.
Well, okay, Island Zero started because I love horror films, and my son loves horror films. And we sort of, off the cuff day, I said, let's make a horror film together, Josh, because he was a documentary filmmaker, and he said, oh yeah, Mom, you write it and let's see what happens. So I wrote a script, and he brought in his childhood friend who happens to work in Los Angeles as a producer, and we hired actors, and we filmed in a really cold month of March in Maine. The story is about a group of, it's sort of a fishing community on a little island off the coast of Maine, and one day the ferry doesn't show up. The ferry is their lifeline to the mainland, and when the ferry repeatedly doesn't show up, they're stranded, and they don't know what's going on because their phones have gone dead. So every time they send a fisherman to the mainland, he doesn't come back, and then the dead body starts showing up along the shoreline, and they wonder if something is hunting them.
And as were involved with this movie, you wrote the story, and you get to work with your son. That has to be a lot of fun. And a new project for you. What are the things that you've learned of the differences of writing and then putting it to visuals as in a movie? And I guess there's so many people involved when you do a movie. That's different.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had like 20, 25 people on the set every day, and this is a really small, low budget film. What I learned was how important casting is. As a writer, you can write the most wonderful dialogue, but if you don't get the right person to play that part, that will destroy your whole film. So movie writing is really it's a union between the writer and the actor, and I have learned to trust and really respect actors a great deal because of this film.
And are there any other movies that you're thinking about now that you have that first one?
Yeah, well, we're filming a feature-length documentary now, my son and I, on a topic that has fascinated me ever since I was in Turkey during Ramadan and wanted bacon. And I wondered, why don't they eat pork? What is it about the Jewish religion and the Muslim religion that forbids pork? So we're doing a documentary looking at the history of why that decision was made. Why did this religion decide that pork was taboo?
Very interesting. Also, let's tell people, what are some of the other things that you want them to know about your books? Let's say someone never picked up a Tess Gerritsen book. What are some of the things that you want them to know about your books or even the Rizzoli and Isles characters? I mean, they're fascinating.
Well, all my books are thrillers. They always involve crime, and a lot of them involve the science of how to investigate crime. The Rizzoli and Isles series is a 12-book series featuring my two heroines. It was turned into a television show called Rizzoli and Isles, which went for 7 seasons. And I have written in multiple genres, from romantic suspense to crime to medical thrillers to science fiction to historical. So I'm all over the map.
Well, it keeps you, and traveling is also a part, because I follow your Twitter all the time and you're traveling places. That also spurs creativity.
Yes, several of my books were inspired by trips I took to Italy, such as this one. Playing with Fire is inspired by a trip to Venice when I had a nightmare that...
I remember that, yes.
Right, eventually led to my writing a book about the Italian Holocaust. So travel, I think, you see the world with a different perspective, and it opens your mind up to multiple stories.
And I hear with musicians, and I'm a musician, I play the organ and piano. As a musician, I've heard even people like Willie Nelson talk, when they're stuck, when they have writer's block for their songs, they take a ride in their car.
Oh my God, that's what I do.
Exactly. So certainly when we take traveling to a bigger extent, like going out of the country or things like that, there's no doubt that does give you some creative ideas. And that part of the trick, though, I would think, and you must have it done down very well, and that's capturing those ideas. How do you capture your ideas? When you're talking about earlier, you're talking about the ideas that you collect. How do you capture them? You write them down, or?
When the idea comes to you, it is usually such a flash of insight that you don't have to write it down. You will remember it. And it often happens to me while I'm traveling, especially boring car rides. If I'm driving a long, boring distance and you're just sort of focused on the driving, and your mind is working on a problem that maybe you have been focused on too hard. You need to get away from that focus, and all of a sudden that aha moment comes. And that aha moment almost lights up your brain. I think you can probably see it on MRI that something happens. So traveling, hot water, that's the other thing I found. Archimedes had his eureka moment when he was taking his bath. Well, I think that a lot of people have eureka moments lying in hot water. So it's a matter of relaxing yourself in a way that allows your brain to think without tension.
We are talking with Tess Gerritsen, international best-selling author, and super fun, by the way. So, Tess, let's tell people some of the other things that you have on the boards, or what else would you like them to know with the last couple minutes?
Oh, well, keep an eye out for Island Zero. It is making the rounds of film festivals. It's showing in Austin, I think, September 21st. And then I have a new book that I'm working on, which is another complete change of pace for me. It's a ghost story.
And your website is beautifully done all the time. I love going to it, TessGerritsen.com. Again, TessGerritsen.com. A question, let's say, about this book again, I Know a Secret, your current book. When you finish the book, first of all, how do you know it's finished? And when you finish it, do you read it from beginning to end just as a reader would, just to make sure it's ready to go, or how does that work?
Well, I do multiple revisions. So this book probably went through 7 revisions, and by the 7th revision, whether it's done or not, you're sick of it. So it's done. But yeah, I read it repeatedly from beginning to end. And I think I spend just as much time rewriting as I do writing the first draft.
And are you a fast reader? Did you ever take one of those fast speed reading courses, or when you pick up, whether it's your book or another book, do you read fast, or how do you get?
I'm a medium reader because I think if you read too fast, you miss things. And sometimes, especially if it's a really lovely, well-written book, I take my time.
You want to savor it, just like a
Yes.
great dinner. You want to
Well,
enjoy.
you don't want to gulp it down. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Tess, now let's tell people anything else that you want them to know about creativity and also the challenges. We talk about success on the show, and I think it's just what you have and what I have. We enjoy what we're doing. We're successful. But what do you do when there's challenges? How do you handle the tough parts?
Curiosity is so important. Always keep your mind open to new and interesting information because, like with my ideas folder, you never know when one little fact that you pick up will become important 10 years down the line. So that's an important part of creativity, is to be open to new information.
And I remember what you said the very first time you were on the show when you called in, and I think we were talking about what you would recommend to someone that wants to write a book. You said, go live a life.
Yes, yes.
Living life, sometimes the mundane we take for granted.
Just the experience of falling in love. I mean, that's something that, millions of books have been written about. And if you haven't experienced it, maybe you need to.
And when you're not writing books or doing movie projects, what do you like to do for relaxation around the house?
Oh, I garden. I'm a big vegetable gardener, and I love to travel. I love to go to see new places.
And living in Maine is a pretty nice place right there.
Yep.
Tess, let's tell people again, the website is?
TessGerritsen.com.
And you are on a tour right now, right here in Houston, Texas with us, TessGerritsen.com. Check out her books. The current book is called I Know a Secret. What a beautiful cover and a thrilling read. I finished it just a couple days ago, and I didn't see that coming at all. And that's the fun of it, right?
Yep, that's fun. And I was surprised, too, when it happened.
No doubt about it. And I love the curiosity idea, and creativity is so important. And I think no matter what age we are, we have to have a childlike fascination with whatever we do. And I think you have it, and I do have it too sometimes.
Yeah. So I want to tell all the kids out there, read multiple newspapers. Remember, newspapers have a lot of information that you just may use someday.
And thank you so much for being here in Houston, Tess. We love it. You are listening to Successful Living with Bill Knapik, and today with Tess Gerritsen. Go to the YouTube channel, Bill Knapik Radio Shows, where you can actually see Tess here in the radio studio and, of course, hear her. And until next week, thank you for listening, and thank you, Tess.
Thank you.